Thank you for joining thank you for joining today's webinar on the Maryland's Department of Transportation Business Certifications. Again, I'm Rosalind Davis. I am the President and CEO of Rhoda Business Solutions. We are an award-winning consulting firm. We specialize in business operation and transformation, so business process improvement, change management, strategic planning. But we also specialize in talent management, where we do executive coaching and professional development training. And then we do operational support services such as administrative support. We are a certified woman, veteran, and minority-owned small business, and we're located here in the Washington, D.C. metro area. Now, before I get started, I want to thank the Maryland Capital Enterprise, the Women Business Center Director, Lisa Twilley, and also Marvin Jenkins for providing this training platform. We've had this ongoing relationship for well over a year now, and it's great. And I continue to thank you for providing this training platform to be able to give this information to Maryland businesses. I also want to thank Precious Handy. She's the founder of Precious Hands, LLC. She's also a client of the Maryland Capital Enterprise Women Business Center for allowing me to use some of her application screenshots so that I can develop today's presentation. Now, finally, my disclaimer. The screenshots that you're going to see in this presentation are actual screen captures from Mbe.Dbe.Sbe certification online application. But the views and opinions expressed during this webinar are my views, and in no way are the views and opinions of the government or any other entity. And if you haven't done so already, I recommend that you, in the top right-hand corner of your Zoom screen, switch to the standard view because it's going to enhance your visibility of the application screenshots. During this presentation, if anytime you have any questions, you can put them in the chat and Marvin will read out those questions, or you can raise your hand and he will also call on you. But I will also be taking pauses at certain times to allow for questions, or you can just wait to the end and ask your questions. It's totally up to you. And with that, I am going to go off screen because I want you to pay attention to the slides and not me moving around. So here's our agenda for today. So we're going to go through the application process. We're going to go through how do you determine your eligibility, what kind of required information and documents you need. We're going to kind of go over that uniform certification application and what's the purpose of that. We're going to go through section 1 through 4, and then we're going to talk about some document lists, but we're not going to go into a lot of details on the document because that will be covered in part 2 of the application process. So this is just the agenda for part 1. Again, this is a 2-part series. I want to always point out that there is no cost to apply for Mbe.Dbe.Sbe certifications. You must be a for-profit company with current business operations. So the Maryland Mbe.Dbe.Sbe application is a 4-step process. The first step is the application submission. And then the second step is investigation to include an on-site or virtual visit and an interview just to make sure that you are in fact a business that's operating currently. And then the third step is an evaluation to see if you meet the eligibility requirements. And then the last step is the determination where they will make a decision whether or not you have been approved or denied to receive your certification. This whole process takes about 4 to 6 months for Mbe.Dbe.Sbe to render a decision. So I would say be patient and continue to check your spam or your junk folder to see if, in fact, they may have sent you an email and requiring additional information. But it normally takes about 4 to 6 months. So starting the process. Again, Mbe.Dbe.Sbe, Maryland Department of Transportation, is the state's official certification agency for companies that are seeking minority business enterprise, disadvantaged business enterprise, airport concessions, disadvantaged business enterprises, and also the small business enterprise certifications. herein referred to after the MBE, DBE, ACDBE, and SBE certifications. So throughout this presentation, I will refer to them by their acronym. So the Office of MBE, they highly recommend that you apply for your MBE, your DBE, and SBE at the same time, because then it's just one application. If you want to do business at the airport, then you would also complete the ACDBE certification section as well. Now, if you are located outside of Maryland, you must be certified by a governmental agency in your home state before applying for certification in Maryland. Out-of-state firms may also need to meet other requirements in order to do business in Maryland, such as being registered and in good standing with Maryland. So for today's training, I'm going to focus on creating an account and applying for a new certification. So this is what your screen will look like as you go through the application. Once you enter your business tax ID or your EIN, the system will check to see if your company is already listed in the database. So let's assume, again, this is a new application. A match was not found, so you would continue to create an account. Now, where do you get your business tax ID from? You get that from the irs.gov. It's an online process. It's sometimes referred to as your employee ID number, EIN, but to apply, it's online and it's free. And it's you can receive your EIN number within 15 minutes of you applying for it. It's strictly online. Account creation. So at a minimum, you will need to complete all the fields with asterisks as highlighted on this slide. So you'll need your business name, you'll need your company type. So whether that's an LLC, whether that's a corporation, sole proprietor, and so on and so forth. You also need your main company email, a phone number, and an address. So those are the minimum requirements that are required to create an account. Continue with the account creation. Again, you need to complete all the fields that have asterisk. So who is your point of contact, their email and username, and then a phone number, and then you have to create a password. Now, once you create your account, you'll see this welcome screen. So again, the Maryland, or I'll just say MDOT, Office of Minority Business Enterprise is pleased to announce the implementation of their new certification management system, CMS, and it's accessed through a cloud-based web portal. So you will need access to the internet to access the online application. So if you look at the welcome screen, you will see certain sections that are highlighted. So it'll tell you about the different certification programs. It'll also tell you that they highly recommend, again, completing that one uniform application so that you can receive decision on MBE, SBE, or DBE at one time versus applying for each one of those certifications separately. Now, I highly recommend that you click on these three buttons that talk about MBE, DBE, and the SBE certification so that you can get more additional information and find out what the eligibility standards are for each of those certifications. Now, before I move on to determining your eligibility, Marvin, I'm going to pause right there to see if there's any questions.
None so far.
All right.
I have a question.
Yes.
Will a home address or a Google number disqualify you when in the application process?
No, because if you're a home-based business and you're operating out of your home, that home address will not. The Google number, you need to make sure that someone will answer the phone number and it doesn't like just go to a generic voicemail and no one returns a call, because that's the number that they will contact you if they have questions.
Okay. Also with the Gmail, and on a company email, will that disqualify you?
It will not disqualify you, but I'm gonna go off a little off script. Just keep in mind that the government kind of want to work with people who are in business, and Gmail is not a business account. They're looking for a domain name to be in your email address. So just be aware that sometimes that Gmail address may go to their spam and they may not see it.
Okay, got you. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Rosalind, we do have one other question now in the chat.
All right, what is it?
How long does a business have to be established to apply?
There is no minimum time required. When I applied, I was in business probably 3 months. So, and as we go through the application process, and especially in part 2, where you have to provide documentation as backup to the information that you've entered earlier in the application, I will show you how you get around the fact that if you've only been in business 3 years, yet they're asking for 5 years of business tax returns, what do you need to say and enter so that you can get past that hurdle? Does that answer the question?
Yes.
All right. So we're going to go through the MBE eligibility. So if you can see the ownership, so whoever the applicant is that is applying for certification, you must be 51% owned by one or more socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. Minority status is kind of listed here is highlighted here on the screen. Now, for 2025, they've actually raised the personal net worth threshold to 2.1 million plus, as you can see here on the screen. So I have highlighted that in red text to show you that for 2025, that number has increased, which is great for businesses that are applying. So going back to management and control, here at the bottom of the slide, they want to make sure whoever this applicant firm is that's 51% owned, that you possess the power to direct or cause the direction of the management and policies of the firm, and then that you make day-to-day decisions. And I highlight this on the slide because you want to make sure that your resume, because you do have to submit a resume, includes that language where you possess the power for the management and policies and day-to-day operations. Now, the Mbe.Dbe.Sbe eligibility. So it has a lower dollar threshold, and it's highlighted here on the screen in red font. So it's about a little south of it's about $2 million. And that is the personal net worth for DBE and ACDBE eligibility. Now, SBE is the same as the DBE, ACDBE. So if you've been paying attention, the MBE is the one that has the higher dollar threshold. So required information and documents. So this is a list of the required information and documentation for your application. Now, based on your company structure, whether it's a sole proprietorship, an LLC, partnership, or corporation, I highly recommend that you download and review the applicable checklist that applies to your company structure. So listed here is common documentation that you will need regardless of what type of certification you're applying for, if you're not applying for all three, plus that ACDBE. On this list of required information documents, you're also going to notice that there are 2 documents that must be notarized. And that is your affidavit, a certification that says that you are a DBE or MBE social disadvantage in one of those protected categories. That has to be notarized. Also, your personal net worth statement, once it's completed And you have all your dollar figures in there. That has to be notified as well. And the preference to submit your application is electronically via their online application portal. So now we're going to go into more detail about the uniform certification application. And so the first thing you'll see is once you download and or print your uniform certification application, keep it for reference as you proceed through the online process. So when you see this screen, it's asking you about your firm's location. For this training session, we're going to, again, this is for a new certification for the first time. So you're going to click, your firm is not currently certified by Mbe.Dbe.Sbe. Your firm is located in Maryland and you are seeking certification. So those are the things that are highlighted on the screen. You would click the Submit a Uniform Application. Now, if your company is not located in Maryland, again, you will need to register your business in Maryland, then return to complete your online certification application. There is discussion about reciprocity across state lines, but no final decision on that yet. So on this screen here is that four-step process that I talked about at the beginning. Again, it's your application. Excuse me. It's the information that you put in, it's the evaluation, and then it's the determination. At the bottom here, it says it'll list the business name that's applying for the application. All this information will auto pre-populate, such as your email address and your company type as you proceed through the application. So you won't have to keep entering that information. It's going to pre-populate for you as you proceed through the application. But again, some of the mandatory information you'll see is the business name, email address, company email, company type, and then the use existing information to fill in the application. If you check that box, that's going to make it auto pre-populate on your preceding screens, or the succeeding screens, I'm sorry. So your eligibility evaluation, by answering these questions, it's going to help you determine if you should apply for certification. So the first one, is your firm at least 51% owned and socially and economically disadvantaged? You would check the correct box. Is the disadvantaged owner, again, that's the 51% owner, a U.S. citizen or lawfully admitted, so you would check the appropriate box. And is your firm considered a small business by the standards of SBA? And then the key on this particular slide, and when you get to this portion on your application, is your firm organized as a for-profit business? If you are a not-for-profit business, do not proceed because your business is not eligible for certification. This certification is only for for-profit businesses. And then, does the majority owner personal net worth exceed? And there's the dollar figure for 2025 highlighted there in red text. So the next,
we do have one question in the chat.
Yes.
Rosalind, it says, is this applicable for online businesses in Maryland?
Yes. Yes, you don't have to be a storefront business if that's the concern. Does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right, document notification. So the next few slides are overall application instructions. Something that on this slide I want to point out. If you're unable to provide documents because it's not applicable to your business, I'm going to show you how you can use a Word or PDF document to document that and state so, because you can't leave it blank. You have to answer all the mandatory questions. So in your response, I recommend that you will include your application number, either in your Word document or your PDF, your company name, and then the exact name of the requested document that they have listed in this application. Use the exact name so that there's no confusion and it doesn't delay your application. And then just a quick rationale as to why you're unable to submit the documentation. For instance, if it asks for 2 of 5 years of personal federal tax returns and you only have 3, then you would just write a letter for the other 2 years, 1 letter per year that says you've only been in business 3 years, you don't have 5 years of tax returns. That's how you document when something does not apply to you. And if you leave a mandatory document unfilled, you'll see that in red as we go through the application, you won't be able to complete your application. All mandatory questions and mandatory documents have to be completed. On this slide, it's also telling you about your timeline. So it'll tell you when you have submitted your application, how many days you have left to complete your application, but it also gives you a date as well, so that you can see how much time is left remaining for you to complete your application. So here's a list of the mandatory documents. Again, due to time constraints of part 1 workshop, I'm not going to go through this entire list of documents and details. They're going to be covered extensively in part 2. But this is just a list of the documents. The affidavit of certification, again, it has to be notarized. Personal net worth has to be notarized. Your business and personal tax returns, your proof of good standing with SDAT, saying that you are in good standing with the state of Maryland, some identification documents, bank authorization, proof of contributions, resumes, year-end financial statements, articles of organization, original and amended operating agreements, and profit share agreements. But again, we're not going to go into any of these documents in detail during part 1.
We do have a couple more questions.
Yes.
The first one was, what if you are new in business and haven't filed any taxes?
Then again, you would say it's not applicable. And I had explained to where you would just create a Word or a PDF document. You would put your business name, your application number, and you would simply state that you do not have business tax returns to submit because you've only been in business, X amount of time. But you have to upload that document for each year that does not apply. Next.
The other question was, could you repeat the form we should place in lieu of that documentation?
It's just simple, a Word document that you create.
And then another question is popping up now. It says, will that decrease our chance of being certified?
No. No. What will decrease your chance of being certified is if you don't answer the questions, if you don't upload the mandatory documents. So again, if it asks you for 5 years and you only have 3 years, you still must provide some type of rationale why the other 2 don't apply. You have to just create a Word document and says it doesn't apply because you've only started your business 3 years ago. But you have to do that for each year that does not apply.
That was it.
Okay. So there's also a section that says, if applicable. Here's a list of documents that's basically if they apply to your business. So licenses, license renewal forms, quarterly state unemployment tax wage reports. If you've ever been denied for or decertified or any of these certifications, leases and loans, vehicle titles that you use for your business. So if you have a POV that you also use for business, you'll need that information. Your copy of your 3 job contracts, trust agreements, business plans, meeting minutes, and then any additional documents that are not already provided that may apply for your business. Again, I'm not going to go through this in detail. This will all be covered in part 2. So this slide is a review of your application. It has your application number there at the top. And don't forget to refer to that application number when you create your external correspondence, either using Word or PDF or some type of other document that you may use, whether it's a Google form. Just always include your application number and your business name on there. This is also a reminder that if you don't complete your application by the date listed on this application screen, that your application will be deleted. You won't be granted an extension and you will have to start over. So please pay attention to this date for deletion that's listed, that will be listed in your application. So here are some additional instructions before you begin your application. I kind of want to refer to this, like for instance, there's the application number, but over here to the right is sort of a key. So it'll tell you if it's red, then it is mandatory. If it's yellow, it's optional document. But then if it's green, that says that you have completed that particular question and or document. So this is just a quick visual representation, color coded to show you quickly, if you were to do an overview of your application on a screen, where you stand as to completing your application. So in areas that are not applicable, then you will mark that as not applicable. And I'm going to explain to you how do you mark that as not applicable if it doesn't apply when it comes to the if applicable section, not mandatory. All mandatory documents and questions have to be answered and documents have to be uploaded. So if you have a section that you just want to come back and complete at a different time, you can jump around in the application. Again, this will give you that visual representation to see what sections you still need to complete if they're not shown green on the screen. I highly recommend that you always hit this Save Draft button after you complete each section, because you don't want the system to time out. You don't want your internet to lock and you lose the information that you've already entered. So always save your information often. So this is what the screen will look like if you have not completed your application. As you can see, all these things still need to be completed. And again, a visual representation of all the areas that need to be completed. And right now, these are all showing incomplete. So like I've just mentioned, you can jump around in this application. You can complete section 2, section 4. You do not have to complete these in order. Down here at the bottom where it says signature and submit, you will be asked to include your signature, which is your name, but it's not going to allow you to submit this application if they're still red on the screen in your application. So that's sort of a fail-safe that you don't accidentally hit the submit button when there's areas still need to be completed. So with that, Marvin, I'm going to pause to see if there's any questions before I get into section 1.
Not since the last one. We haven't had any.
All right. So section 1, basic contact information. Again, it's going to ask for who is the contact person in the title that's submitting the application. As you can see over here, it is required because again, it's red. So it's mandatory question that must be answered. Legal name of your firm. The reason why it's shown green on this screen is because this section has been completed. But when you submit your new application, this is going to be red because it is a required field. Following with your phone number, your fax if applicable, but fax is optional. And other phone number is optional, as you can see here on the screen. And then email has an asterisk, so it is a mandatory question. And then the firm's website is optional. So once you complete section 1, the basic contact information, you'll see this is what the screen will look like, where it will give you a check mark and show you that you have completed section 1 and it now is green. You can always, again, come back to this screen here to give you a visual representation of where you stand in completing your application and what sections still need to be completed. So section 1, certification information. So section 1 has several parts to it. So this one is certifications and applications. Is asking you about any other prior certifications or applications that you have for your company. So this is where you will also make the selection on the type of certification that you are applying for. As you can see on the far right, that each of these questions are mandatory. So you must indicate the type of application that you are applying for. Are you applying for MBE and SBE? And is your firm currently certified by any of the following MDOT program or U.S. Department of Transportation program? So all these questions are mandatory. Continuing with some more mandatory questions. Now, section 2, we're going to get into general information in your business profile. So here on question 2A1, they want you to provide a concise description. So just give a brief description of what your company offers. Again, like I stated, we offer business transformation, executive coaching, and business operations support. Here you can keep it as simple as leadership development and training consulting services. Whatever that might be applicable for your company, just enter a brief description. The next question is asking you to select your North American Industry Classification Codes or your NAICS codes. You would select a code by clicking this button and then entering a code, and it will populate for you once you make that selection. If you don't know it, you can enter in general information and it will come back a search with different areas that may be applied to your job. And that's here in that lookup. And then the last question, additional NAICS code. So you can enter more than one NAICS code, and that's optional. But they're asking for the applicable NAICS code. So that's your primary NAICS code for your business. That is a required question. Now, I also want to point out that your resume should identify the type of work that's listed under this primary NAICS code. So you want to be prepared to submit a separate letter that outlines where, when, and the duration of work performed for each NAICS code that you list in your application. For instance, this applicant listed the 541611, which is administrative management and general management consulting services. In their resume, they need to explain how, when and where they have performed that type of work. So business profile continue. So most of this information is self-explanatory, but I just want to point out that it is mandatory information. And then I want to caution you again that if you are a not-for-profit business, then you should, if you select no right there on that question, then don't proceed because your company is not eligible for certification. Now, business profile, number employees. You want to include yourself as one of the types of employees. As I've highlighted on this slide, you'll also need to upload a document with the list of employees per category, title, and dates of employment. So that could be, let's say, a spreadsheet that has all your employees' name, what their title is, and what date they started employment with your company. And if it's just you, then you just put 1 and you put 0 for part-time, 0 for seasonal, and that's okay. And then that's just you submitting the information for yourself. And then the bottom half is this is your firm's gross receipts for the last 5 years. So if you just started and you don't have any gross receipts, then you want to at least put 1. Because if you leave it 0, it's not going to accept the 0. You have to at least put $1 so that you can at least advance through this screen during your application. And then it's asking for gross receipts of affiliate firms, and that's any firms that are associated with your company. Here you can put 0, but for your firm, you have to at least put $1. Now, this is a mandatory question. And when you get to the mandatory documents is where you're going to have to upload those tax returns to support this information. Section 2, another part to Section 2, we're going to talk about the relationships and dealings with other businesses.
We do have one question just popped up.
All right, go ahead.
It says, being that trucking is a high-risk industry, is there a lower risk code we can use if your company does multiple things?
A lower risk code? I don't understand what the risk code is. Are you saying a NAICS code? What is a lower risk code? I don't know what that is.
He's saying yes.
Oh, so your NAICS code is your primary NAICS code that you use for your business. So for instance, yours may be trucking. I'm not sure about your NAICS code for your industry. But you would have to identify what is your primary NAICS code for your business. There's no risk associated with submitting what your primary NAICS code is for your business. Does that answer the question?
Says okay, yes.
Okay.
Do have another question popped up now. If we put $1 and we haven't been in business for those many years, will this put us at risk?
No. No, because they know most people are just starting out and they haven't been in business for the 3 to 5 years as required for personal and or federal returns. So that's why you answer the mandatory question with $1 to show that you have at least read the question and you answer the question. And then in part 2 of this workshop, we'll show you how to get around that mandatory document when it does not apply because you have not been in business for those 5 years that it's requiring you to upload a document. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we're going to talk about your relationship and dealings with other businesses. Again, all the questions that you'll see on this screen are all mandatory, as again over here that they are required. So you would go through and answer these questions and then click save and return to the summary to advance to the next section. And same thing here, answer and save and then move to the next section. So section 3, majority owner information. So if you are the majority owner and you're the one that's completing this application, you would see right here where it says add the owner. So you would click that button that says add the owner to start this section. And adding the owner, you're going to see that some areas are already pre-populated from your previous sections. Down here at the bottom where it says class of stock owned, there is an option for not applicable. And then date acquired, don't leave that blank. That is the date that you started your business. So although it's kind of mislabeled date acquired, as if you bought another business, it's actually the date that you started your business. But it also could be the date that you acquired a business if you purchased another business. But just don't let that title date acquired get you to thinking that it doesn't apply for start of a business. So enter a 0 or as applicable when it says initial investment to acquire ownership interest in the firm. So if you didn't invest any cash or real estate or equipment in your business to get it started, then just enter 0. But if you enter that you put $20,000 cash, you're going to need to show proof that you made a deposit of that 20,000 cash into your business, and so forth for real estate, and so forth for equipment. But if those don't apply, you would just enter 0. And then it's going to ask you to describe how you acquired your business. And you can just say you started the business yourself. Or you would just answer one of the other questions. If it was a gift, if you bought it off of another, if you inherited. So answer the question as applicable. But it is a mandatory question. And then describe the familiar relationship with other owners and employees. So if there are none, just put none in that box, but it is a mandatory question. And then the last question, does the owner perform a management or supervisory function of any other business? So answer appropriately, and then save your information and click next so you can go to the next screen. Now, the first two questions, they're green on this particular workshop because they've already been answered and saved. But the important thing on the screen is the personal net worth question. Please make a note of this particular question. It's question 4A. It says, what is the personal net worth of the disadvantaged owner applying for certification? The reason I highlight this particular section, and I want to front stomp this, is because if you have not completed your personal net worth statement, you may not have what that dollar figure is. But you want to put a dollar in there. For instance, on this example, $500 has been entered, only so that you can get through this portion of the application. But you just need to remember, when you complete your personal net worth statement and you have that bottom line figure, that you come back to this section and enter that personal net worth so that that number on the statement that you get notarized also matches this number in this particular question. So I want to again foot stomp this personal net worth question and the dollar figure that you enter here. It must match that which you put on the form. Any questions on that before I move on to another portion of section 4?
No, nobody has posted anything.
All right. So section 4 is control. So you can enter yourself as the officer and the board of directors if you are the sole employee, sole owner of your company. But all the questions that are on this screen are mandatory, as you can see over here in the far right where it says required. And it's perfectly acceptable to list yourself, if you're the sole person in your company, as both the officer and board of director. Now, section 4, control management personnel. So again, you can list yourself as the point of contact with the same title for each question. It's perfectly acceptable. So if you are the one who sets the policy, you do the bidding, you do the purchasing decisions, marketing and sales, and you do the supervisors, field operations, if that's you, you list yourself in each one of those questions, but it is mandatory that you answer those questions. Section 4, control and inventory. So the first question, indicate your firm's inventory of equipment and vehicles. So this is equipment. You don't include your personal on vehicle unless you use it for your business as well. And company vehicles, they're looking for like a company vehicle that bears your company name. So maybe a tow truck or a bread truck or some other type of delivery truck or things like that. That's what they're looking for on the equipment and vehicles. and indicate your firm's office space. If you've purchased the office space or you have a lease value, you would enter it there. And then your storage space. For example, if you have a storage warehouse for your company, you would list that there as well. But each of those questions are required. Section 4, financial information. So for the first question, I'm just going to say if you use a accounting bookkeeping software to manage your payroll or a payroll provider, then you would answer yes. But if you don't use that to rely on another firm for management of functions of employee payroll, then just click no. And then here in the highlighted section where it says financial and banking information, this is asking for who can sign checks for your company. You will need a bank signature authorization form or letter that you're going to upload in the mandatory documents section later on in your application. And again, that will be covered in part 2's workshop. And then bonding information. If you are a construction company, you will need bonding. So you would need to answer this mandatory question if it applies to your business. And then the last question, if you select yes on your sources of loan, you want to make sure that the sources of loan and the dollar figures and balances match what you put on your personal net worth statement. But if you have no outstanding loans, then click no on this particular question. But again, all these are mandatory questions. Section 4, licenses and contracts. So it's asking you to list your licenses and permits. It's asking for trade licensing permits, such as engineers, plumbers, electricians. But you're also going to need to be prepared to upload your license and your permit certificates when it comes to the mandatory document section. And then in addition, you're going to list any contracts that you have, and you'll also have to upload those contracts when you get to that section if that applies to you. And then the additional information section, you can use it to identify if you were a prime or a subcontractor or any other pertinent information that you think applies to your certification application. Now, here is just another visual of when you go back to look at the status of your application. Again, you can see that section 1 through 4 has been completed. And for fail-safe, the system will not allow you to submit your application because, as you can see, there's still several sections that are incomplete as highlighted here in red. So the document list, this is the list of mandatory documents. Again, we're not going to go through details of each document. This is just showing that list of documents that you will see in your application, but all of these are mandatory. This list here is if applicable, and I will show you during part 2 of this workshop. If they don't apply, what do you do to show that they don't apply so you don't have to answer the question, or so you don't have to upload a document if it doesn't apply? That will be shown to you in part 2. So some key takeaways for today's part 1 of the Mbe.Dbe.Sbe and ACDB certification is, first, to apply is free. You will get a lot of companies wanting to do this for you for a fee, but to apply for the certification, it is free through Mbe.Dbe. You want to also consider completing a uniform certification application so that you can apply for multiple certifications at once versus applying separately and then having to continue to upload all that documentation. It's a 4-step application process. There is required information and documents as indicated by the mandatory questions and mandatory documents. Uh, Again, when I foot stomp the personal net worth section in section 4 under majority owner information, where the $500 was entered just as a placeholder. But once you complete your personal net worth form and that's notarized, you want to make sure that that number on the form matches section 4, majority owner information. And I highly recommend that you retain a copy of your entire application package for your files, but also for reference as well, in case you do get a question from Mbe.Dbe.Sbe reviewers regarding your application. This way you'll have readily accessible information that you can refer to. Now, something that they've started here within the past year, I'd say the Office of MBE, they will do a 30-minute cursory review of your complete application and supporting documents. So after you completed your application, answered all the questions, and you included your supporting documents, they'll give you a free 30-minute review to make sure everything's complete and give you some feedback. So I highly recommend that you take advantage of that. And part 2 of this workshop is going to be on January 28th, and it's going to be at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Hopefully you've already signed up for this since you have sat through part 1. And during part 2, we're going to go in a deep dive of those certification documents, those mandatory and if applicable in much detail. So with that, I want to thank you for joining me today for part 1 of the Mbe.Dbe.Sbe certification application process. Again, if there are any questions, you can put them in the chat or you can raise your hand to ask those questions. And also you can connect with me on LinkedIn to be one of the first to know about future webinars, because as Marvin stated, I actually present several training workshops for Maryland Capital Enterprise Women Business Center. And then part 2 will be posted on LinkedIn as well, the date and the registration link if you haven't already signed up. So with that, Marvin, I'm going to pause and see if there's any additional questions.
That says, let's see, how do we learn about the 30-minute review?
So when you go through the application at the bottom, there is a button that you can click to ask for that 30-minute review, but your application has to be completed.
Let's see. Next question, are previous webinars posted on LinkedIn?
They're not on LinkedIn. Maryland Capital Enterprise posts the recordings on their website.
Yes, and when I send out the record, like I said, we did record this. So when I send out the link to the recording, I also have some other information on the email, and it gives you the link to our YouTube website, and that has all of our recordings on there. So you can access them through that. Let's see. It says, is there a 1 year in business requirement in order to obtain certification?
There is not a minimum time in business required to submit your application for certification.
Says, if we need help with the application process, can you share any information on that?
It depends on what you need help with and if you are a client of Maryland Capital Enterprise Women Business Center.
Yeah, and with that, if a person needs help, we can arrange to have a one-on-one with you, Rosalind, for 1 or 2 sessions. And but it, like you say, it depends on what they're looking for.
Correct. It is not to go through a deeper dive of the entire application again. That's just
Oh,
to
no.
answer a few questions and maybe give you some pointers on areas where you may be having difficulty.
Correct, yes. Is there any other questions? You can either unmute yourself or put it in the chat. I've got a few comments thanking you for your presentation, and let's see. There's one says, "I am new to this. Is this where we start for beginners?"
But are they starting a certification or are they starting a business?
Starting a business.
I'm going to let you handle that.
Yeah, if you're starting a business, you can reach out to us at the Women's Business Center at Maryland Capital, and we can we can help you get started as far as getting your business plan in order and basically helping you through the process. So once you get my contact information, just reach out to us, and basically, if you go online to either the Women's Business Center at Maryland Capital Enterprises or the Maryland Capital website, and fill out a client intake form if you're not already a client, and then we will reach out to you and assist you in that process. Any other questions? I think there was a lot of good questions though, and
It was, yes. Lots of interest. Hopefully there'll be a lot more people applying for their Mbe.Dbe certification.
yeah, sure. Looks like no, it's well, if no other questions, then like I say, you will be getting a link to the recording, and I don't know if it'll be tomorrow but either tomorrow or Thursday, I'll be sending it out. So if you have any questions beyond what we went on here, you can reach out to me, and we'll see if we can't get you an answer. So with that. Thank you, Rosalind, for again another great presentation, and thank everyone for your attendance today. And hopefully, if you haven't registered for part 2, go ahead and do that. And then, if nothing else, we'll see you on the 28th? You say, Rosalind?
Yes, part
Yes.
2 on the 28th of January.
28th. So. With that, do you have anything else?
No, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, everyone.